Instead of calling section 2.6 the planning the proof section, it should be called the congruent supplements and congruent complements theorem section. For the following slides, please answer the questions as I go through. Name a supplement of angle 2. Name a supplement of angle 3. What postulate or theorem justifies your answers to questions number 1 and 2? Of course, you should say that it's the linear pair postulate. What if I were to tell you that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent? Then by substitution, you'd be able to find that angle 1 and angle 4 are congruent to each other. This is the first part of the congruent supplements theorem. The congruent supplements theorem says if two angles, 1 and 4, are supplements to two congruent angles, 2 and 3, then those angles are congruent. 1 is congruent to 4. Listen again. If two angles are supplements, 1 to 2, 4 to 3, to two congruent angles, 2 and 3 are congruent, then 1 and 4 must be congruent to each other. Take a look at this picture. Name a supplement of angle 1. Name a supplement of angle 3. What postulate or theorem justifies your answers to questions 1 and 2? Again, you should be saying that it's the linear pair postulate. In addition to 1 and 3 being vertical angles and congruent, you just proved that angle 1 and 3 are both supplementary to angle 2, and therefore they're congruent to each other. This is the second part of the congruent supplements theorem. It says if two angles are supplements to the same angle, they are congruent to each other. If 1 is supplementary to 2 and 3 is supplementary to 2, they are supplementary to the same angle, therefore they're congruent to each other. This also works when we're talking about complements. Take a look at this diagram. Segment LM is perpendicular to segment MN, and segment KN is perpendicular to segment MN. Notice that I put the right angle boxes in there for you. Name a complement of angle 2. Name a complement of angle 3. What postulate or theorem justifies your answer to questions 1 and 2? The theorem that you should identify right now is the one that says if the exterior sides of two adjacent acute angles are perpendicular, then the angles are complementary. Suppose you're given that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. What would that lead you to conclude? If angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 by the first part of the congruent complements theorem, which says if two angles, 1 and 4, are complements of congruent angles, 2 and 3, then those two angles must be congruent. 1 is complementary to 2, 4 is complementary to 3, 2 and 3 are congruent, therefore 1 and 4 are congruent. Take a look at this next diagram. In this picture, segment LM is perpendicular to segment MN, and segment KM is perpendicular to segment MO. I put in the right angle boxes for you to be able to see this more easily. Name a complement of angle 1. Name a complement of angle 3. Using that same theorem about the exterior sides being perpendicular lines, that the two angles are complementary, you should be able to figure out that 2 and 3 are complementary. Since angle 1 is complementary to angle 2, and angle 3 is complementary to angle 2, then 1 and 3 are congruent to each other. This is part 2 of the congruent complements theorem, which says if two angles, 1 and 3, are complements of the same angle, angle 2, then the two angles are congruent. 1 is complementary to 2, 3 is complementary to 2. Those two angles, 1 and 3, are complementary to the same angle, therefore they are congruent to each other. Please complete your note sheet and come in tomorrow with questions.